it doesn't eliminate the risk of the fine if you don't follow the advice of the audit. So let's assume for a second that your organization is willing to listen to the input that's given. If your organization is willing to listen to the
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Actionable ESG Talk Series brought to you by AKFI Actionable Knowledge Foundational Institute, the world's first nonprofit industry consortium committed to bridging the gap between ESG, sustainability, and digital transformation. My name is Isabella. I am the co-host here with Manuel, the other co-host, also the executive director at AKFI, and our special guest today, David. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And thanks to this talk series, we get to connect with great minds to together discuss the current state and the future state of ESG sustainability and digital transformation. David, a little bit about you to our audience. David's a serial entrepreneur trying to leave the world a little better than he found it between Edenark Group. David, please add in the story later in our conversation. We had a chit chat earlier. I really love how you come up with a name. And also other companies as called A Better World Starts With Me, Best You Can Be, and Gym for the Brain. Back to the company called the Edenark Group, which is a 25-year-old company that provides the world's premier environmental sustainability certification program, and including carbon neutrality certification, net zero certification, and ESG plan development for SMEs, particularly organization below $1 billion per location. Thank you very much, David, for joining us today.
Sure.
And to start our conversation, what are the sustainability certification trends based on your experience with your startup company focused on the certification programs?
Well, I think that the quick answer in terms of sustainability certification trends would be that everything is up. If you look across the world, you see that 97% of large organizations have some kind of a sustainability program. That's not necessarily saying that they have a sustainability certification program. Most of them have customized sustainability programs. And the other side of the spectrum, small to mid-sized enterprises, SMEs, have less than 1% saturation with regard to sustainability. So you have big companies that are mostly saturated with sustainability of some sort, and SMEs that haven't really even started. But what we're seeing is that whether it's consumers who do not believe a company's sustainability claims unless it has a third party that validates those claims, a third party validation certification, or whether it's an SME that's trying to win business and gain some kind of recognition or compliance, you've got the need for both of these groups to have third-party authorization, third-party compliance, third-party certification. So across the board, we're seeing a rise in the need for certification.
And
Thank you.
Definitely certification, it's between many other functions, I think it's a stamp of approval, and it's a shorthand for people to understand where the companies are. So we've seen many companies with different levels of credibility to claims for sustainability, net zero, carbon neutral, and so on. So when you look at the certification, and I understand it maybe as a market if you want, there are different players in that market, right? There are private companies, there are governments, there are certification bodies. Can you give us a little bit more insight how this certification, if you want, industry is working, and especially with ISO?
So, simply stated, if you look at sustainability programs around the world, there are hundreds of them. And we've put together a video that gives SMEs, small to mid-sized enterprises, recommendations on what to look for and, in effect, how to sort through all of those different options when trying to pick what would be best for your company. I mean, it can be somewhat overwhelming. Quickly stated, pick a certification that's global. Pick a certification that has third-party authorization, third-party validation. Don't spend the money buying a certification where you self-certify your accomplishments. Yeah, sure, we put solar on the roof. Absolutely. Send us the piece of paper. Do not spend the money on that kind of a certification, because you will not gain the credibility that you're hoping to achieve from that body's certification. So make sure that you're using a global program that's recognized around the world. Make sure that the program has a third-party validation audit system to ensure that you're doing the things that you say you're doing. Now, many people would say, "Ooh, gosh, I don't know if I want that kind of oversight." Well, you do, because if you don't have that, you've wasted your money. So either go in big and go for a program that will give you the kind of validity that you need, or don't waste your time. And then the document, the video has 6 other things that you should look for too, but those are the first 2 that I would recommend thinking about. And if you look across the global landscape, there are a few programs that are significant. In our case, we use the ISO 14001. It's bigger than all the other global standards added up and multiplied by 5. It's the king poobah in the world of sustainability. And our program obviously meets the things that I would think are important. So my recommendation is just to go out, read that or watch that video, and then use those 8 guidelining points to find a program that works for you.
So you're raising a very interesting point, actually. Many bodies go in self-certifications, and now actually at compliance level, at legal level, companies are called to the carpet, right? To demonstrate that what they put in the net zero statement, what they put in their renewable, and everything in the social, in the stakeholders, they have to start to report it as is material to their business, which means they have to start to report it on the impact on their business. So maybe can you tell us a little bit more the value of auditing in this case? Does it prevent auditing? Does it prevent actually getting big fines from the European Union or California, or maybe in the future from the Security and Exchange Commission?
Well, it doesn't eliminate the risk of the fine if you don't follow the advice of the audit. So let's assume for a second that your organization is willing to listen to the input that's given. If your organization is willing to listen to the input that's given, and if you're using a valid auditing group that is there to ensure that you're meeting the standard that you are adhering to, and if you're adhering to a globally accepted standard. So we got 3 pieces here. You got to follow the advice. You got to have a consultant that is tied to the standard, and then the standard's got to be a globally accepted standard. If you have all three of those things, then the odds of you running afoul of either consumers, i.e., being called a greenwasher, or corporate compliance or government compliance is frankly very small.
Right. And, if you don't follow doctor's orders, you don't follow doctor's orders. It's the same, I guess, principle. If you want to take the risk, you take the risk. If you pollute the water and you think you don't get caught, even if the audit tells you, be careful, then
We have
risk.
a lot of organizations that have realized that they have overstepped, and they are doing what is called green hushing, which means they've just stopped talking about anything green because they know that they overstepped, and they're now trying to not say anything. And then you have other organizations that are still aggressively exaggerating what they can validate through any kind of audit. So you've got both those that have recognized they've overstepped and have pulled back, and then you've got those that are still gung-ho with going forward and trying to make more money off of misrepresentation. The best course, of course, is to follow a program that's valid, have an audit that's valid, follow the prescribed path, and you'll be fine. You'll be able to promote your achievements. The market will respect you and believe you. You'll get revenue side gains, and you won't have the risk of being pulled in on the carpet.
So, do you have one or two examples, actually, case studies from your Edenark company working on the certification? You work in a space that is not so populated yet, in the sense that most of the certifications are done by very large companies, as far as I understand, companies above $1 billion in the multiple $billion of reporting. The S&P, for instance, 50 report. So do you want to bring us a case study?
A case study in what? I've got to be careful in certain things that I would say, but what are you leading towards?
Well, let's put it as a simple question. Why companies come for certifications? If you look at the positive, right? Okay, they may or may not watch your video, but they may find that a point in their activities that they need certification. For instance, there are in the supply chain,
Oh,
and the company above, the company receiving their supply, are asking for certificate, as an example.
okay. So the if I understand correctly, why would a company pursue this? And
Right.
let's break the answer down into three segments: consumers, corporate clients, and government regulations. First, let's talk about consumers. 7 out of 10 consumers will move their purchases from where they're currently purchasing to a certified sustainable company if they find one, or if one is presented to them and its product is consistent in price and quality. Now, stop for a second and think about companies that are advertising their products and services, and they're spending a lot of money on that advertising, and they're trying very hard to differentiate themselves versus that organization down the street that's their competitor. How many things can you think of where, if you say, this is who we are, the majority of consumers will leave where they are and go here for that? Not many, maybe not any, other than this. So the consumer demand that we're seeing. 25% of consumers have already chosen, and between 20 and 45% of consumers are currently in play right now, looking for sustainable options, looking for companies that they can validate as being sustainable so they can move their business. It is a huge, huge issue with consumers. Now let's move to corporates. So that 97% that I touched on before that have sustainability programs, they, by their own decision to become sustainable, they have an internal mandate that they must use sustainable vendors. And you're saying, yeah, but they don't. You're right, they don't. Why? Because their procurement departments know that less than 1% of SMEs are sustainable anyway, so they don't even ask. But let's say you're an SME and you're bidding a job and you are certified sustainable, and you let that prospective client know that you are sustainable, you're going to win that bid. So from a small business pursuing big client standpoint, you got to talk about it, and you got to be legitimate in what you're talking about. You can't just say I'm sustainable and not be, because then bad things are going to happen to you. But if you're certified and you talk about being certified, you are going to win that bid. Now let's talk about net zero. Think about all the companies in the world that have made net zero claims. In other words, we're going to become net zero by 2030. For them to become net zero by 2030, they have to have their vendors in tow. Let's stop and explain that. A company can become certified carbon neutral with its scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. That's the emissions of its company and the emissions of the local energy provider that's providing its electricity. It controls those two things, can see those two things. However, for it to become net zero, it has to include its scope 3. There are 17 things in scope 3. The most important one is its vendors. So every company that has claimed that it's going to become net zero by such and such must have its vendors along for the ride. So now you're a small company and you're trying to take market share, and you're looking at big companies that have already made sustainability or have made net zero claims. And you say, oh, by the way, I'm certified sustainable. Those big companies are in an awkward position. They're going to have to start changing out their vendors and replacing their existing vendors with sustainable vendors. They got to do it. So now let's go to governments. So you've got over 100 countries in the world that are already committed to net zero programs. The EU, of course, is already there. In the United States, California just passed Bill 253 last week. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission is supposed to publish its new rules next month, the month of October. By the end of this year, we expect to have over 50% of the world's economy in countries that either have a sustainability, a carbon, or an ESG program with teeth. Teeth meaning fines. So back to your question about why would a company become certified? Certified sustainable companies are growing up to 20 times faster than their non-certified peers. Let me say that again. Certified sustainable companies are growing up to 20 times faster than their non-certified peers. Why? Because the end user customer wants it. Corporate clients wants it. Governments wants it. Net zero forces it. When a company becomes certified sustainable and waves that flag and says, look at us, we're a good corporate citizen, they sell more stuff.
Not so long ago, one of the largest companies reported its results, and the CEO spent quite a lot of time to talk about the recyclable plastic he put in his smartphone. I disclosed the company maybe. And in the packaging, in the repairs. So I think the memo is circulating through the CEO offices that sustainability is a serious business. If nothing else, driven by compliance and regulatory, as you mentioned, right? European Union, California, U.S. Security and Exchange Commission. Also, there are carrots in the process. Both the European Union, I know, and the U.S. government enacted legislation to provide subsidies and financial incentive to build sustainability, especially in
So
certain sectors.
when we look at the in effect the trends and the opportunities versus the risks, we are trying to present to small to mid-size enterprises that they should look at this as, in effect, making lemonade out of lemons. The revenue side opportunity versus the compliance side risk. If we talk about the compliances that are coming, nobody likes to be forced into doing things. Nobody likes to be pushed. And I understand that. What businesses should look at is what consumer demand is and how they could capitalize on that consumer demand if there's less than 1% of SMEs that are certified and you become certified. That means you're going to be probably alone in your competitive group as being such versus your competitors that aren't. And if you start incorporating that into your advertising, your sales force starts talking about it, you have it on your website, you have it in your bids, you will sell more product. So rather than thinking about, oh my gosh, the compliance is going to force me to do another thing and I just hate doing all these things, think about the money that you're spending advertising your company. And is that money effectively talking about something that consumers want to hear about? And if it's not, then think about becoming certified sustainable, because that is something that consumers want to hear about and are acting on with their wallets.
Maybe before going back to Isabella, I have one sort of footnote in what you're saying. The the challenge we looked in AKFI. We created a white paper through our research students, and we looked at car companies, for example, and we look at their requirements for their supply chain. And what you are saying can be translated also be almost a critical demand for these suppliers that are certified. Why? Because when you read let's say the Ford or the GM or Toyota's requirements, they are written in legal terms. You comply or you out. And the compliance is not necessarily clearly articulated. For instance, I know another company, high tech, that has put ISO 14,000 downstream, but the companies upstream are asking for other certifications. So if they don't, agree on what they have to do, it becomes really, really a costly and very complex case where companies have to spend a lot of money on reporting on different standards, different certifications. So homologation has to happen sooner than later.
Well, if an organization picks a global standard and follows a global standard, that global standard will adhere to the various compliance programs that are circulating around the world. An organization will not be able to comply if it uses something like the 14,001. It will meet compliance with that. So those vendors that are choosing, or if that company that you're just talking about, if they're asking its vendors to comply to 14,001, there's a reason for that. There's a reason because they know that their vendors are going to comply with compliance. The company itself may have previously headed down a path with another standard, and now it's trying to find a way correctly to where it needs to get to, and it's telling its vendors where to go to get there first.
Of course, and as you mentioned, by the way, Scope 3 is from 60 to 95% of the carbon footprint that they have to report. So it's out of the control when you describe the, Scope 1 and 2 is under the direct control of the company. Scope 3 is not.
I was on with a global company 2 weeks ago, a $60 billion global company, and they have 80,000 vendors, and they've already run the calculations, and 92% of their emissions are from their Scope 3 vendors. And they are already behind where they need to be time-wise to meet their obligations. Because remember, they're going to have to tell their 80,000 vendors that they have to become sustainable and have a carbon program. Then they're going to have to give them some time. Then they're going to have to threaten those that haven't. And then they're going to have to give them, in effect, a termination period. Then they're going to have to think about terminating those that haven't complied. But what are they going to do? They're going to have to find certified sustainable companies to replace them. 80,000, they're already in a bad spot time-wise, because telling them they have to do something is one thing. Finding replacements is a totally different thing. So if you're a vendor and you want to take market share, now is a phenomenal opportunity, because all these big companies are going to be up against the wall in terms of trying to find replacement vendors that are certified sustainable and have carbon programs.
And it's not like replacement vendors are sitting and waiting to, by the phone or by the email to get a call to comply. It's going to be a shortage of compliant suppliers. So you cannot fire your, if you have 2 suppliers or 3 non-compliant, you're done. You cannot replace them. But time is running very fast. Amazing discussion about the need and the intricacies of compliance. And as you mentioned, ISO, it's a good starting point. Thank you for mentioning your video, and send us the link, and I'll put it in the message to our members.
Okay.
And I would like to turn it to Isabella for more questions or question time permitting.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Last but not least, what are your advices or suggestions for those who want to pursue a career in sustainability?
So we have an internship program, and we tell all of the students who are trying to become, have a degree and get a job in sustainability, the same thing, and that is, first, don't make the mistake of thinking that because you're passionate about something, everyone's passionate about it. When you're passionate about something and you really believe in it, you think that everybody should see the world the way you do, and that should have the same views and should have the same passions. And that's not the way the world works. Sustainability is like everything else. It is sales. It is a sales process. If you have an idea, you have to sell it to someone. And that sales process usually requires a presentation. It usually requires justification, because that person is not automatically going to agree with your views because they have a whole bunch of other people presenting good ideas to them. So if you want to get into the sustainability business with a future of somewhere around $100 trillion in opportunity, then think about the fact that you're going to do more than sit in a little office and run numbers and plant trees. You're going to have to sell your ideas. You're going to have to stand in front of people, and you're going to have to be convincing. So learn how to present yourself, learn sales techniques, learn how to get in front of people and argue in a positive way why your passion should be their passion. It's not just saving trees, it's convincing people to save trees.
Thank you. Thank you for the golden piece of advice, David, to speak of the hard work and what really makes a difference when you want to achieve something other than passion. And thank you all for joining us today. To our audience, make sure to tune in every week for a new episode of AKFI's Actionable ESG Talk series, where you can gain new perspectives on how to mitigate risk and create value by integrating ESG and digital transformation. Until the next time, bye for now. Bye, David. Bye, Manuel.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Isabella.